Navigating political conversations on a date, when to talk politics. Dating can be exciting, but it can also bring some tricky conversations, politics being one of the most divisive topics. In a polarized world, discussing politics on a date can either spark meaningful connection or lead to uncomfortable disagreements. The challenge lies in determining when and how to approach political conversations. Here are some insights into when it might be appropriate to bring up politics on a date, and when it might be better to steer clear. Early dates, tread lightly with politics. During the first few dates, it's natural to focus on getting to know each other without diving into controversial topics. Many people prefer to keep things light, discussing interests, hobbies, family, and work rather than political views. Early dates are a time to build rapport and see if there's compatibility on the basics, like communication styles, humor, and shared values. Jumping straight into a political discussion can feel overwhelming and may make the other person uncomfortable. That said, if politics plays a large role in your life, such as if you're a political activist or your work revolves around policy issues, it may feel dishonest to avoid the subject. In such cases, it's perfectly fine to gently introduce the topic, but with a focus on personal experiences rather than heated debates. Instead of saying, "What are your views on immigration?" you could try something like, "A big part of my job involves social policy, what about you? Do you keep up with politics much?" This approach invites discussion without being confrontational. Reading the room, signs your date is comfortable. Not every date will be comfortable discussing politics, especially early on. Pay close attention to body language and verbal cues. If your date responds with one-word answers or changes the subject, it's a sign they may not want to engage in political conversations just yet. On the other hand, if they ask follow-up questions or seem interested in your opinions, you might explore the topic further. Also, it's helpful to observe if there are natural openings for political discussions. For example, if your date mentions attending a protest or volunteering for a campaign, they're likely signaling that they're open to those conversations. However, if they seem more focused on casual topics, it might be better to save deeper discussions for later. When politics can't wait, deal breakers and core values. For some people, political alignment isn't just a preference, it's a non-negotiable deal breaker. If your political beliefs are closely tied to your core values, it may feel essential to address them sooner rather than later. For example, if issues like climate change, human rights, or reproductive rights are incredibly important to you, you might want to know early on whether your date shares your views. In such cases, it's valid to introduce these topics in a respectful and non-confrontational way. An appropriate time to bring up politics might be after you've already established some connection. Rather than turning it into an interrogation, you could frame the conversation around shared values. For example, "I'm really passionate about sustainability, do you follow environmental news much?" This way, you're exploring potential alignment without making your date feel put on the spot. Setting boundaries and avoiding arguments. Even if you and your date hold opposing political views, it's possible to have a productive conversation without it escalating into an argument. The key is to approach the topic with curiosity rather than judgment. Ask open-ended questions like, "What led you to feel that way?" and listen to understand, not just to respond. It's also helpful to acknowledge when you disagree without making it personal. Statements like, "I see where you're coming from, even though I have a different perspective," can keep the conversation respectful. That said, some people prefer not to discuss politics at all on dates. If you find yourself in a situation where your date becomes uncomfortable or defensive, it's okay to pivot the conversation to something lighter. You might say, "We don't have to get into politics if it's not your thing, let's talk about something more fun." Knowing when to back off shows emotional intelligence and can keep the date enjoyable. Later dates, deepening the conversation. As you move beyond the first few dates and start building a stronger connection, political conversations can become more relevant. At this point, you'll have a better sense of your compatibility, and discussing deeper topics like politics, religion, and personal values becomes natural. When you've built trust, it's easier to talk openly about your views, even if they differ. In later stages of dating, politics can be an important topic to cover, especially if you're considering a long-term relationship. Political beliefs often reflect broader values, such as how someone approaches problem-solving, social issues, and their vision for the future. Understanding where your partner stands can give you insight into how your values align and whether you see eye to eye on key issues. Conclusion: timing and tone matter. In the world of dating, discussing politics is a balancing act. Bringing it up too early can derail a budding connection, but waiting too long can lead to unpleasant surprises. The key is to read your date's cues, approach the topic respectfully, and focus on values rather than confrontational debates. Whether you choose to dive into politics early or wait until later, it's essential to communicate with kindness and curiosity. After all, dating is about connection, not competition, and a great conversation, political or otherwise, is one where both people feel heard and respected.